for all of us. It's about predicting where the consumer is going and getting half of it right.
One of the things we want to do is create ads that don't suck.
Embracing change creates great possibility.
I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.
Today on the show, I've got David Aaker. Hailed as the father of modern branding, he serves as the vice chair at Profit, a global marketing and branding consultancy. He's a recognized authority on branding, has developed several recognizable concepts, including the Aaker brand vision model, and has received numerous awards for his contributions to science of marketing. In 2015, he was inducted into the American Marketing Association Hall of Fame for his lifetime achievements in marketing. David's authored and published hundreds of articles and 16 books, including Aaker on Branding, 20 Principles That Drive Success, Brand Relevance, Spanning Silos, Brand Portfolio Strategy, among others. His books have been translated into 18 languages and sold over 1 million copies. Today on the show, we talk about his latest book, Creating Signature Stories, Strategic Messaging That Persuades, Energizes, and Inspires. This is a must-listen episode for anybody interested in the concept of storytelling and how those stories can build strong brand. You'll hear numerous examples and also a little backstory on how David became interested in branding in the first place. I hope you enjoy the show. David, welcome to the show.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you on the show. I thought maybe we could start by you telling us when you first became interested in marketing.
Well, I think the first thing that I can remember is an advertising case course at MIT, Sloan School of Management. And I was just fascinated by the issues. How do you get communication objectives? How do you persuade? And that really got me into marketing.
That's great. That's great. So I believe you've published around 16 books now. I may have that a little off. I'm not sure. And the latest is Creating Signature Stories, Strategic Messaging That Persuades, Energizes, and Inspires. And I think you've dedicated in part or talked about the fact that your daughter played a critical role. Jennifer Aaker, who's a professor in her own right at Stanford Graduate School, and turning you on to this research area. What can you tell us about the research, and then we'll get into the book?
Yeah, Jennifer is a experimental psychologist at the business school at Stanford, and she's been teaching stories for some years and done research in related areas. And so she got me into the research, and two things emerged. First, there's really a gap in the story research and psychology and marketing in defining what a story is not. And so I kept pressing her for literally 2 years. What is not a story? Because if everything is a story, it doesn't have any meaning. And finally, we got a breakthrough. Story is not facts, at least the way we use stories here. It's a once upon a time narrative about an experience or something. It is not a set of facts. And the problem is when people say, give me your brand story, they'll recite 5 facts. Right. And anyway, and second, once you define a story, as we have, stories are so much better at changing perceptions, at changing attitudes, at stimulating social behavior, and even in gaining attention than are facts. And I'm not talking about 20%. I'm talking about 200%, 400%. And this is documented by hundreds of stories. Can I give you an example?
Yeah, I'd love to see an example.
There's a guy named Zhang Rumian that became the head of an appliance company in China now called Haier back in 1984. And he had when he first took over, a customer came in with a defective refrigerator, and he went to the warehouse and found there was 72 more defective refrigerators. He brought them all into the production floor and had his employees destroy them with sledgehammers. Now you could give facts about how Haier has created a quality culture and have quality programs and so on. People wouldn't be interested, but if you tell them about the sledgehammer story, they understand.
Yeah, no, it immediately hits you. How, if you go a little deeper, how do they actually persuade? Why is there something about us as humans that make us react that way?
Well, let me tell you another story.
Yeah.
Barclays was the least trusted brand in the least trusted industry in 2012 in the UK. And what they did is they developed a new purpose, namely helping people achieve ambitions in the right way. And they liberated employees to develop their own programs around that purpose. And then they got some of these programs and they told stories about their impact. One of them was a program that a group of employees were called the Digital Eagles, who were aimed to help people thrive in the digital era. And one of their helpees was Steve Rich, who was a soccer devotee, but in a car accident, he couldn't play anymore, but he could play walking soccer. And that's where you have 6 people on the side and you play soccer, but you walk. And Digital Eagles helped him develop a website to raise awareness in the country about this, connected some 400 teams, connected players to teams, developed a national tournament. And when this story and others were told, the trust for Barclays went up 35 to 45%. And previous campaigns involving facts did nothing. And you stop and think, what's going to attract attention? Talking about your, quote, trust program or telling the story of Steve Rich? And when you tell a story, you don't have counter-arguing. I mean, it's a story. You don't say, is that really true? They're just they're just self-centered. And people themselves deduce the logic. They say maybe subconsciously, any company that would help Steve Rich can't be all bad. So anyway, that's how stories persuade. They inhibit counter-arguing, they attract attention, and they allow people to deduce their own conclusion.
I love those stories. So the core focus of the book is on what you call signature stories. Can you define or explain, how a signature story may be different from just a story in general? Yeah,
it's in 2 ways. One, it involves a strategic message. That means something about the organizational values, the culture, the customer value proposition, the business strategy, something strategic, something that is not tactical, not some short-term communication. And the second thing is that it's just not a story. I got up in the morning, brushed my teeth. It is something that's authentic, something that's intriguing, and something that's involving. So, a classic example would be the 1912 story of how L.L. Bean decided after duck hunting that he didn't like wet feet anymore, and he designed a boot that had leather in the top and rubber in the bottom, and he started making them. And the first batch leaked, and even though he had no money, he took them all back and he redid it. And in that story, even today, over a century later, sort of reflects the thirst at L.L. Bean for innovation, for the passion about the outdoors, and for the concern for the customer. And again, it does it far better than any set of facts could.
Yeah, there's no agree. I feel like there could be some confusion between a signature story and what might otherwise be called a brand's purpose. Could you help clarify those 2 concepts?
Yeah. Well, a brand purpose, or say a brand story, is a set of facts. Mm-hmm. And a signature story is a narrative. And furthermore, it's a narrative that can involve a lot of strategic messaging, like organizational culture, value proposition, business strategy, in addition to brand purpose or brand vision.
Okay, that's helpful. So how do these stories benefit organizations? I mean, you talked about it resonates with consumers or customers, but I'm sure it must drive employee engagement as well. What are other ways?
It does. In fact, employees are looking for meaning in their work, and they're looking to be associated with an organization that they respect and admire. So it's really important for organizations to provide some kind of higher purpose, and to communicate that higher purpose. Stories are a lot better than just assertions. And that applies to consumers as well. But I think that a major benefit of stories, it really creates energy and visibility and changed perceptions for a brand. Let me just give you one more example. Unilever's Lifebuoy has a program called Help a Child Reach 5 that started in India. And it's all about trying to get 1 billion people to wash their hands differently, more effectively, because that can really save a lot of lives of these kids. And they actually took their program experience in 3 small towns in India and did a video around each. One of them showed a woman, Utari, that's nurturing a tree that was planted in celebration of the birth of her child. And we see that child now getting to its 5th birthday and the happiness that surrounds that. Well, these 3 videos got 44 million views. I mean, this is bar soap.
Right.
They got 44 million views. Just think of the visibility, the energy, and the goodwill that's associated with the Lifebuoy brand in these areas from this from these stories. Again, you tell facts about bar soap. I don't care how much money you spend, you're not going to get much of that.
Right. Well, you definitely got my attention. I mean, on that stat alone, and the fact that it is bar soap. Nothing against bar soap, but it's probably the most commoditized thing out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So how should marketers look for or develop their signature stories?
Well, there's no checklist of 20 things that the more checks you have, the better the story, because it's the total story impression and its presentation that matter. So it's sort of not the sum of its parts. But having said that, the main characteristics are these 3. The first one is intriguing. Listen. It was a drab and rainy day in mid-May 1931 when the 28-year-old Neil McElroy, the advertising manager of P&G's Camay soap, sat down in his royal typewriter and wrote perhaps the most significant memo in modern marketing history. I mean, doesn't that perk up your ears? Don't you want to know what's going to happen next and so on?
Yeah, exactly.
And so intriguing. And it should be authentic. There's a story that Skype tells about 2 women, 2 girls that were born without left arms, one in New Zealand and one in Indiana. And Skype got them together every day to chat and compare notes. And they eventually came together in New York, or they were on Ellen and so on. It's authentic. I mean, Sarah and Paige are real. And it's involving. Nor, which means flavor, that's their thing. They asked people to go on a foodie date with those who had similar flavor personality. They liked the same food, and they had to feed each other. And so you saw 6 of these couples do that on stage, and it was very awkward, a lot of tension, but a lot of emotion. There was even some kissing afterwards. It was really involving. You're drawn in. So anyway, we look for those 3 characteristics off the top: intriguing, authentic, and involving.
I love it. So one of the things as I was reading your pre-release manuscript, and thank you for sending that along, but one of the things that I was reading that seemed counterintuitive at first was the thought that you would have many signature stories for a brand, not just one. Can you tell us a little bit more about why that's true and why multiple stories are ultimately needed for a brand? Yeah.
Well, for one thing, they add freshness and maintain the interest. Take Blendtec. Will it blend? They put in iPods, golf balls, marbles, and they asked, will it blend? And of course, it was tongue-in-cheek and very humorous. Incidentally, this got probably more impressions than any other ad ever created. 300 million saw these things, right. And it cost them nothing. But if they just did the iPod one and then stopped, there sort of would be no reason to watch it again. But they have golf balls and they have marbles, so everyone added some new freshness, and it also can add depth and texture. So Skype wanted to tell its story. So in addition to the Paige and Sarah story. They had one with an orchestra leader connected to 12 street musicians through Skype. They had a Pilates training person connected to his remote clients. And so the combination of all these stories start to really add depth and texture. If they just had one of the stories, they wouldn't kind of make their point that Skype can be used creatively to foster relationships.
But I do love those Blend Tech videos personally, I have to admit. But as you think about an organization, creating these stories probably is not always fostered in every environment, especially maybe overly corporate ones. So if you're thinking about organizations and creating an environment where you can foster story development and capture them, are there any suggestions or any thoughts on how organizations can do that?
Yeah, and that's kind of the reason for my book in part, because the big challenge is to get people to recognize the power of stories. I mean, really recognize it. I mean, most people will not challenge the assertion that stories are more powerful, but they really have to believe it enough to commit to it. And then they have to develop a program to either find or to create stories. And that's not so easy. And third, they have to find a way to manage those stories. What we find too frequently is that organizations that do get story religion, they hire copy editors, they hire reporters to develop stories, but then they have too many stories. I mean, my company Profit has 100 client stories. So then you have to find a way to manage story overload. And you do that by having some lead stories. You do that by having a story bank. So you have the right story for the right context and so forth.
Well, I love this notion of story. And as I think about the evolution of marketing and kind of where we are today with a lot of digital aspects that at sometimes, not all digital, but sometimes it makes it feel a little robotic. I embrace your push here on signature stories. So
yeah, I always say to my friends that are obsessed with digital that really digital means content.
Right.
Content ultimately means stories.
I like that. It's very smart. Well, so one of the things we love to do when I do an interview with someone is kind of get to know the person behind the thoughts. In that effort, I would love to know if there was an experience in your past that you think defines who you are today.
Well, I have an interest in actually a whole chapter on how do you apply this signature stories to yourself, to your professional career, and to your personal life. So let me tell you a signature story of my own. It has to do with how I got into branding. So almost 25 years ago now, I was in business strategy. I had a book on business strategy, and I was teaching business strategy. And I became convinced there's too much emphasis on short-term financials. And instead, people needed to build assets. So I thought, I need to be involved. What assets should I think about being involved with? And three things led me to branding. One, the concept of brand equity was just appearing. It wasn't defined. I tried to do that in my first book, but people were realizing you needed to grow, and you could only do so much cost cutting and short-term promotions. Second, I had written a book on advertising and another one on market research and another one on business strategy, and so I had a lot of concepts and tools already to get started. So I wasn't starting from nothing. And third, I did a study that was really influential to me. I asked 250 executives, what is their sustainable competitive advantage? And number one was quality reputation. Number 3 was name recognition. And number 10 was the customer base. So they were all properties of a brand. Mm-hmm. So I really decided that my purpose in life was to try to help people understand and build strong brands.
Love it. So what fuels you? What keeps you going every day?
Well, that's really has been a motivation for me for 25 years. And virtually all my professional effort has been directly or indirectly aimed toward that objective. All my blogs, my articles, my books, my consulting, and I joined Profit to further that goal. So anyway, that's kind of my higher purpose. And on one hand, it's a little presumptuous and naive, but nevertheless, it's what really drives me.
Right. Well, stepping back, and this is always a tricky question for consultants, but, because you have clients, but are there brands or companies or causes that you follow or you think others should be taking notice of?
Yeah, there's a lot of them. And of course, I used a lot of stories in my books to illustrate. And so I have a ton of case studies, but two people that I really am, that are real heroes to me. First of all, Paul Pullman at Unilever, who has developed for Unilever the sustainable living plan about 5 years ago. He's got, it's got three major sort of components, and with them, it's got 5 or 6 subcomponents. And for each of them, he's got objectives and programs. It's quite amazing. And then if you look at his individual brands, Dove has this real beauty for women, self-esteem for girls. They've done major things with that. I've already mentioned Lifebuoy, help a child reach 5. Right. And if you look at the reason, you look at what he says, why he's doing that, and he just says it's the right thing to do. I mean, it's not only because it gives you ancillary benefits, but it's the right thing to do. And there's problems, and we can help, and why wouldn't we? The other guy that I admire a lot, and I don't know either of these people. I'd love to meet them, but that's Mark Benioff. And he started Salesforce.com about 15 or so years ago with a mission that he was going to have a company that was going to deal with social issues. And he has this 1-1-1 plan. He gives 1% of the company, 1% of the people's time, and 1% of the services to some social cause. And he has liberated his company and his resources to do all sorts of good. And he's recruited 70 other companies to mimic him.
Wow.
The impact he's made, and both of these two guys have made, are just amazing. I think that we're really engaged in a fight for the soul of capitalism. And it's people like Pullman and Benioff that are leading the charge. And, the struggle is by no means won. I mean, the short-term financials and the people that raid companies and leverage them up and then walk away are still around.
Right. Well, and I know Unilever is still fighting that fight, I think, every day. With,
absolutely. Yeah. There was an effort to buy them by 3G, right, which was frightening.
It is. And thing that puzzles me today is the relationship between 3G and Berkshire and or yes. Buffett. And yes. Buffett, his historical view is the long view.
Yes, exactly. If you go and read 3G's mission and beliefs, I mean, it's so transactional. Yeah. I mean, it's they just want a quick buck.
Right. It's interesting. It's something to watch for sure. So last question for you, and this is always I don't know if I should ask it or if I even enjoy the asking it anymore because everyone has a crystal ball, but I would love to know what you think the future of marketing is going to look like.
Well, I think that, as I just said, I think we're fighting for the soul of capitalism, and I'm really encouraged about the fact that the concept of a higher purpose, especially a social or environmental higher purpose, is getting incredible traction. And it's really hard to find firms that don't at least give lip service to that. But most of those firms do have programs, and they really mean it, and they're really doing amazing things. If you look at what our government is doing, and then you compare that with to the industry leaders are doing, it's really kind of kind of reassuring. It gives you hope. It gives you light at the end of the tunnel. So I think that, and so I'm really been interested in the concept of higher purpose and this fight for the soul of capitalism. And I think that we all have to get involved. And I said in a blog somewhere that, who is in charge of this? It's not just Pullman and Benioff. It's not just these enlightened CEOs. It's got to be everybody. It's got to be employees that insist on working for companies like that. It's got to be customers that insist on buying from companies like that. It's got to be investors that insist on investing like companies like that. It's got to be the media that publicizes what they do. It's going to take a whole village.
Right. No, wise advice. And I hope for the same future. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Al.
Marketing Today is brought to you by Atomic. Atomic focuses on unleashing the growth potential for clients we serve. Atomic is a strategic consultancy specializing in business, marketing, brand, and innovation. Our singular goal is to help you accelerate your efforts with the right mix of expertise, analysis, and creativity. Check us out at atomic.com, ATOMCK.com. Hi, it's Alan again. Marketing Today was created and produced by me, with project management by Sarah Williams, audio production by Aaron Campbell, writing and editing by Kevin Greeley, social media support by Megan Woods, art and graphic design by Sarah Dell. If you're new to Marketing Today, please feel free to write us a review on iTunes or your favorite listening platform. Don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends and colleagues about the show. We love to hear from listeners at info@atomic, ATOMCK.com. I'm Alan Hart, and this is Marketing Today.